Hi everyone, it's Vicky here and welcome back to another Mixed Media Tuesday where I will be creating a double page art journal, and I'm starting today by using a primer. I'm going to prime both my pages with that since I want to use a technique which is super fun and creates an amazing result, but you need your pages to be primed for that. So I'm using a big flat brush just to quickly apply the medium on my pages. I'm working on one page and I'm going to show you the technique, and then I will repeat the same thing on the other page. As I apply my primer, I don't care if there are imperfections on the application. If there are some areas that I missed, even better, because they are going to give a visual texture later on. Now here I'm applying the primer on the other page as well, and by the way I'm working back to back. Remember, this is really thick paper, this is 300 GSM, so that makes it nice for art journaling because the pages are going to stay nice and sturdy, not curved at all, even if I apply lots of wet mediums. I made sure that my layer of primer was completely dry just by using my heat gun, and then I will move on and start applying color. For working on my background today, I will be playing with new colors from my Stamperia Dye Ink collection, and I have three here that I absolutely love. So the raspberry, the cream, which doesn't seem much, but trust me, it's great since it matches with pretty much any other color, and at the same time it helps you get rid of that bright white background. So I'm also bringing in the turquoise, and I'm going to start applying the dye ink by using my brushes. So first I'm going to go with raspberry. And the good thing about applying the dye ink with those brushes is that it goes really smoothly, it doesn't give you any splotches, and at the same time when you are working on top of a primer, it kind of stays on top of the primer before it completely dries, which gives a dreamy effect when it comes to stenciling, when it comes to blending the colors together, and you will see what I mean in a bit. Also, you will find that the application is very soft, so you can build up the color as much as you like if you go back to it again and again. And also, I hope you can see the differences in lighter and darker areas that I have from where I didn't apply the primer perfectly, which is something that I absolutely love. And what I'm talking about is going to be more visible in other areas you will see in a bit. So now I have applied my first color. Now I'm going to move on to cream. And I'm going to use a different brush. Now about the brushes, you don't need a different brush for each and every one of your colors. However, I would suggest to use a brush for one color family. So one brush for all the tones of blue, one brush for all the tones of pink and raspberry, etc. But of course, if you do have one for each and every one of them, it's even better. That's what I do. Now look at that. I was able to lift color just with my fingers. And that's what I'm talking about when you are working with dye inks on top of primer. The dye ink doesn't dry completely. This allows you for many techniques which I'm going to show you, plus it allows you to blend the colors together because they do not absorb directly into the paper. They stay up, and if you end up with splotches or with darker or lighter areas, you can simply go back and blend the color. So this is a great way if you cannot achieve beautiful blendings, just try a primer underneath. However, just keep your fingers out of it until you use a heat gun. So now I'm going to move on to a third color up at the top of my page, and this is turquoise, a lovely color, probably one of my favorites, and please don't tell the other colors of my collection. So you see how these two colors, where they touch, the cream and the turquoise, don't blend lovely together. But since nothing is dry yet, I can always go back and very lightly go over the other color and help them blend. And I'm going to go back again with my other brush to help the blending even more. And you can see I end up with a lovely effect. The colors fade to one another. Once you're happy with it, you can go ahead and use your heat gun to make sure that this is completely dry, and then you will not be able to lift the dye ink with your fingers. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and bring in some of the stencils from the collection that I have. And I decided, as I browsed through them, I decided to go with this one with the circles. And let's bring in 3 different stencils so that you can see them in action from the new collection. I will use the leaves as well as the one with the borders. So I'm going to put those aside for now, and let's start playing with the leaf for the background. And I'm just going to place it on top of my page and start lifting color with the baby wipe. You will see that it lifts beautifully. It completely lifts the dye ink from the background, and again that is happening because we did prime the surface. Another way that you can get complete lift of the dye ink is if you work on top of the stone paper journal, and you will get the exact same effect as well. Notice the imperfections on my background from not applying perfectly the primer, so I get lighter and darker areas. And then by lifting ink using a stencil, I do create some interest on my background, but at the same time it's not into your face. It keeps it quite subtle since it is white over those pale colors. And now I'm going to use my heat gun and make sure that this ink is completely dry. It doesn't take long for that to dry, and you will see that when you place your finger on top, you will not be able to lift any color at all. So now I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other page. So let me use some video editing magic here so that we can move on to the next step, which is stamping. Here I'm using one of my new stamps from this collection. You get lots of background stamps along with a couple of butterflies, and then I'm going to use the text stamp, which I absolutely love, and I'm going to stamp the background. For that I will be working with the 2 inks that I already used for the background, again trying to keep everything quite subtle. So I'm starting with raspberry, and I will go tone on tone. So with raspberry I'm going mainly at the bottom of the page, and then I will move on to use my turquoise color for the top of my page. After making sure that this layer of stamping is completely dry, I just use my heat gun for a while. I'm going to move on and use another one of my stencils, and this is definitely one of my favorites. I absolutely love the circles. There is something about circles and leaves that I feel like they can be used on pretty much every project. So I'm going to bring my volume paste. You can use any modeling paste that you have, and I'm going to go over those circles in different areas of my page. Again, for this stenciling detail, I'm going with white. You can use any color. You can go with black if you like those circles to be really, to stand out really for you. But again, you know me, I like subtle backgrounds, so that's what I'm going for this project as well. I like to apply a thick layer and then just wipe off any excess. Make sure that you clean up your stencil when you use paste. It is really important, otherwise the paste is going to block all those details on your stencil. And after this messy step, let me show you how it looks from up close. And I'm going to use the third stencil to create a delicate border. So here is my borders stencil. It gives you tons of borders to play with. Always makes it difficult for me to decide which one I want to use. On the page we made together last week for Mixed Media Tuesday, I did use one of them. Today I'm going to use another one, and I went with the one with the tiny dots. So you can either use some masking tape to mask off any other areas that you don't want to use from this stencil, or just use a finger tool, which I'm using here, to blend the color through the design. This makes it super easy since I can control exactly where I am applying the dye ink. Most of the borders in this stencil are going to give you the corner as well, but you can definitely line it up if you want to create a longer line. I don't want to have a complete border all over the place, so I'm just applying this in different areas here and there. And I'm going with black for the border because it's going to match lovely with the letters that I'm going to add for my motivational quote. So I like to bring a little bit of that black touch on the edges as well. And now that we have a beautiful background full of color, we can try to decide which elements we want to use for the focal points. Now, I do get a lot of questions about the different options, so I'm going to talk a little bit about them. This is a paper pad. It is the Collectables, which is going to give you tons of images to fuzzy cut, and the quality is paper, the normal scrapbooking paper. Then there is the option of two different ephemera packs. These are the ones that we used on last Mixed Media Tuesday. And if you remember, these are cardstock. So it is quite thick, it's not as thin as the paper. And at the same time, it is a sticker. So if you want, you can peel them off or you can use them as they are. You don't really need to peel them off. You can always use your glue. This option gives you the opportunity to avoid fuzzy cutting if you don't like cutting out images. And then there is the option of die cuts. Now the die cuts are way thicker, you get different images here in different sizes, and this is chipboard, so it is quite thick, but sometimes I like to use those inside a journal even though they are thicker. It is going to turn your journal into being quite chunky but well loved, so you can use them here and there in some of your pages. Now these are also great if you like to create tags or if you like to place them on top of cards or 3D projects. They are really nice and sturdy for this type of projects. Now, one other question that I get is, if I get the ephemera, am I going to get all the images from the collectables? Well, the truth is that the collectables come with tons of images. You cannot find everything in the ephemeras. However, some of them, they are included. And another question that I get is if they are the same size. So no, not all the images are the same size. So if you get everything, you will get some diversity on the different sizes, the different colors, but some of them you will find that they are exactly the same. So for example, this pot is exactly the same, but the house isn't. And of course you get the option to find images to fuzzy cut from the paper pads as well. Now for this page I decided to go with a pot and some houses. You can again fuzzy cut them either from the collectables or you can find these exact images on the ephemeras. I'm going to cut out a little slit on my pot so that I can fit inside the houses as if they are coming from the pot, and I like to play with the ephemeras and come up with imaginary scenes because it really makes me happy. I also like to have flowers coming out from the chimneys or gigantic butterflies and gigantic flowers to decorate and embellish the houses. So I'm going to put on some music now and you can see how I put together my composition, and I'll catch you back in a bit. Now I'm happy with how my composition looks at the moment, and I will go ahead and start die cutting some letters to put together my motivational quote on the other page. So today I'm going with Imagine. I'm going to cut out all the letters from black cardstock and stick them down on the other page, on the empty page. And of course you can go ahead and use a stamp if you like, instead of die cutting all the letters. You can see how I placed them down just to make sure that it looks bigger than it actually is, or you can use bigger alphabet dies if you do have them. And now what I'm doing is embellishing my quote just by using ephemeras again, as if they are coming from the letters, those tiny leaves, or with the butterflies that surround the quote. Now you will see that I'm going to change my mind in a bit, since I used 2 blue butterflies and I thought not too many blue butterflies. Let's switch to another color. Feel free to always change your mind. If you don't press the stickers too hard, you are always able to lift them. So I find they are really forgiving. Now I'm using a very thin black marker and I'm going to draw the trail of the butterfly. This is going to kind of connect those two pages together, so we have the same background, we have the same elements here and there, but at the same time you get a butterfly from one page flying to another. I like to somehow bring together those two pages, and the trick with a butterfly trail is always fun. So here I changed my mind again about this butterfly, I changed position, and I'm going to repeat the trail. This time the butterfly is coming from outside the page. And again, another fun trick to do on your journal, since it gives the illusion that there is something going on outside of the page. Now it is time for my white gel pen. The one that I'm using here, because I get a lot of questions, is number 10 Jelly Roll. It glides beautifully over the ephemeras, over the cutouts, absolutely love it. So I'm adding some highlights on the letters as well as on the ephemeras. Again, I'm going to say it as I say it every time, I don't pay attention on where the light might come. This is just white doodling over some of the elements. I find that it helps them pop against each other, and at the same time it adds a touch of whimsical effect. And finally, for my favorite white splatters, I am adding splatters by using white calligraphy ink, but you can definitely do that if you water down gesso or if you use white acrylic paint with water. I find it super easy when it is in a bottle like that, because I don't have to water down anything and I just dip the brush in there. If you feel like you have many splashes in some areas, you can always control it, especially when they fall on top of your elements, since they have that shine on top of them, and you can easily wipe them off just like I did. So here I'm going with my white gel pen for more controlled splatters. And that concludes the project for today. Here are some close-up photos where you can see some of the details better. Links to everything I used can be found down below in the description. I hope that you had fun, that you got inspired. If you did, don't forget to leave me a comment and like the video. Thank you all for spending some time with me today, and I'll see you all next time.